Good morning, children. Let's have the revision of this chapter. And in this chapter, I'm going to show it with the mind map. This mind map consists entire economic reforms from the period 1947 till 1990, which we have studied in first chapter, that is Indian economy on the eve of independence, and second chapter, that is the Indian economic development. In the both the chapter, we are going to understand it with the mind map, or we can say with the diagram, with the structure. Just look at the diagram properly. This diagram is explaining in short with the flow chart of the development experience of Indian economy between the period 1947 to 1990, and also how we did the economic reform after the achieving these all policy. If you remember, I have explained you, I am showing you with the diagram properly, try to understand. I had explained you that before independence, we had an inverse situation in the economy. Then after, we followed some of the reforms. Here, if you see the status of in the right side of the diagram, just look at the diagram. Here, the status of Indian economy has been explained. Indian economic status we have explained in 4 or 5 sector. One, agriculture, where was low level of productivity, dependence on rainfall, commercialization was forced by the jamindars and jamindari system. Then we saw the industry. In industry also we have seen the decline of handicraft industry. Modern industry was rising, capital good industry was very low, so there was absence actually, and tariff policy was discriminatory. Then foreign trade we have studied, then in same as demographic indicators, occupational structure and infrastructure. These all five I have shown in a point so that you can understand at the time of examination. You can see this chart and you can learn entire chapter in one while. Here the infrastructural development, these are the status. Then after we did some of the changes. One by one we did changes in, like for example, we did changes in agriculture. First we saw what are the problems. Then after understanding the problems, we did the changes in agriculture. You just see here the reforms I am showing it, that after the problems, when we got to know there were 4 or 5 problems I am explaining here. There's like lack of permanent means of irrigation, deficiency in finances, modern input was not proper. After seeing these all problems, we followed some reforms. That reforms was called agrarian reforms. Under that, 3 reforms we followed: one, land reforms, technical reforms, general reforms, and under that, green revolution we also studied. Here also I have mentioned all the reforms in points you all already knowing, but if you have to study and revise in at the time of examination, this will be helpful for you. Land reforms we have studied about abolition of intermediaries, land ceiling, same as we have studied in technical reforms about the green revolution, using of HYV seeds and chemical fertilizers, pesticides. Similarly, the mechanization of cultivation. Same in general reforms, we have seen about the irrigation facilities, credit facilities. Similarly, MSP means minimum support price. In green revolution, we have studied about the how HYV seed has created magical scenario in the agriculture sector. After that, we have studied about the foreign trade reforms. In that, first we will have to know what are the problems and how the problems has been solved. The problems was the BOP status was adverse, there was increase in import, and domestic demand was increasing. So we had reformed it by following the policy import substitution. So here I have shown what are the need for import substitution and how it helped the Indian economy to be developed. So overall, this was the summary of the chapter from the period 1947 till the period 1990. Then after we had studied economic reforms. In economic reforms was the totally scenario which we have faced in the period 47 to 90. That problems was we were trying to overcome come from the problems, and these problems were solved by the implementation of new economic policy, that is the period 1991. In this new economic policy, we followed three major economic policy, that was LPG policy, means liberalization, privatization and globalization. So here just look at the right side of the diagram. If you see the diagram here, we have mentioned what was the need for economic reforms. The need for economic reforms, you just know that because the public sector was not performing satisfactory, there was high rate of inflation, debt was increasing, BOP status was adverse, even foreign exchange reserve was also in a bad condition. Then we implemented liberalization. Under that, five reforms we have studied: industrial reforms, financial reforms, tax reforms, foreign exchange reform, and trade and investment reforms. If you see all the points I have mentioned here, so that you can understand what at the time of examination it will be again helpful for you. Industrial reforms, industrial licensing we abolish, and SSI we reservation was cancelled. And the financial sector, what we did, the role of RBI become as a controller than the regulator only. Now tax reform we did, simplified the procedure of taxation. In the foreign exchange, we devalued the rupees value, and now it was depend on market forces how they are going to determine the value of rupee. Trade and investment we did, quantitative restriction we removed, all the rates, tariff rates reduced, licensing for the importing of material was removed. Then after, we brought into privatization. In the privatization, some of the main highlights of privatization is that the government with curb on the share of the public sector was now sold to the private sector, and this is called disinvestment. In this policy, you will mention the highlight feature of the privatization is disinvestment. In globalization, we have seen how we globally interacted with the other countries, and foreign investment how it increased. So this was the LPG policy. Then after implementation of the LPG policy, what achievement we got? These are the points I have already discussed with this, so that now you are able to understand it. With the implementation of new economic policy, we were able to achieve GDP growth, and then also foreign exchange reserve will increase, inflation controlled, private foreign investment increased, competitiveness which was lack in the economy, now it has raised, consumer sovereignty increased, number of choices were available for the consumer, and India was emerging as an economic power. Apart from the LPG policy, we also implemented demonetization and GST. So here demonetization history, their effects, and when it was changed, the period I have mentioned. This is very important topic from for this current batch, because in this batch these two topic has been added, and this will be separately asked in the examination, related to demonetization and related to goods and services tax. So just look at the history here. It is mentioned when demonetization came and what is the meaning of demonetization. Period is also mentioned over here. Effects when demonetization, why it was implemented, especially demonetization related question of 2016 will be asked. So here it is mentioned it was implemented because of to curb on black money, to curb on human trafficking, adverse effect which was created by the Naxalite and Maoist, to curb on that, cash shortage which was implemented. So related to these all the effects you are going to write down. Then you will have to write down when it was implemented. Naturally you will deal about it. Then first of all, it was done in 12 January 1946. That time, all the notes of 500 and 1000 were demonetized with the time limit of 10 days to exchange demonetized note. It was just to check the tax invaders. And second, it was done on 16 January 1978. That time also 1000, 5000 and 10,000 notes were available that were demonetized with the time limit of 3 days. Then the final demonetization was done on 8th November 2016. In that, 500,000 notes were demonetized with a time limit of 50 days to exchange the demonetized notes from the bank and some essential service stores. So this was the history of demonetization. The detail you can study in the Sandeep Garg Indian Economic chapter. At the last of the book, you will find demonetization related topic, and that is very important. You need to go through it. Then the second, we have to study about goods and services tax. Here the objectives I have mentioned. What is the meaning of goods and services tax, you need to study. Then what are the purpose, why it was implemented. Here the objectives are to eliminate the cascading effect of taxation on the indirect taxes, to increase the revenue of the state and central government, to reduce the transaction cost and unnecessary wastage of resources, to eliminate the multiplicity of taxes and reduce the corruption. These were the main objective. How it was implemented and what was the effect was, now all the bundle of indirect taxes like VAT, CST, service tax, CAD, SAD, excise duty, these all were removed because only one tax we wanted to implement in the entire nation. That's why the GST was implemented. The main concept and the main motto is to bring the entire nation into a one roof, means bringing one tax. Removal of cascading effect of taxes created reduction in the manufacturing cost, demand and supply increased, black money we were able to control, and Indian economy we wanted to boost. So that's why GST were implemented. So this was total summary of Indian economy after 1990, means NEP policy when it was implemented in the year 1991. So this much we have to study from the first, second and third chapter, and these first, second and third three chapter consist 12 mark for the exam point of view. So you are going to understand in this way. Now I have given you some of the important questions. Kindly go through it. There are 10 questions I have taken out. These are so important. Apart from that, there are a number of questions given in the NCERT. You are going to study those all important questions and also practice of the objective question which is given in the chapter. And if there is any doubt, any kind of things you are not able to understand, you are free to ask. Second, that on next Tuesday we have a class test, so you are going to prepare thoroughly. Here just if you see the first, second, third question, that is related to evaluate privatization, globalization and liberalization measures of economic reform. Wherever the word evaluate or critical appraisal or critical assessment word you will find, means you need to write the answer in negative and positive both, with both the aspect. Okay, now the next fourth question is given related to the what was the reason for the industrial sector performed poorly in the reform period. That reason you will have to explain. Major factor responsible for the high growth rate of service sector, that is very important for this year exam point of view. And Navaratna policy, I have also discussed about the Navaratna policy in the NCERT portion. You will find the Navaratna related topic. If you are not able to write your answers, I will explain you in later at the time of revision. Then after this is very important question, why RBI has changed its role from the controller to facilitator. And then some of the distinguish we have to study, means difference between the bilateral and multilateral trade, tariff and non-tariff barriers, and strategic and minority sale. These three are very important, and the last year examinations also it has been asked. So you are going to thoroughly prepare this and discuss the economic reforms in the light of social and justice welfare, and also why outsourcing is good for the India and why many nations are opposing the outsourcing. So we have to prepare some these much question. Apart from that, some of the definition you need to learn, just like what do you mean by devaluation of rupee, what do you mean by disinvestment, what is import substitution, the concept, what short notes on WTO, short notes on outsourcing, GST and demonetization questions separately you will have to prepare. So this much you need to prepare and understand. If there is any doubt, any kind of problem, you are free to ask, and I wish you all the best for the. Thank you.